So I'll be talking about methamphetamine use among people who use opioids. I'll be presenting on behalf of our team. This work was done on, our center is based in unceded lands of many nations, including myself, the Credit, Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat people, and many other diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in the so-called Toronto. I have no disclosures other than not really great salary support from St. Mike Hospital, but that's a different conversation. 30 seconds gone. So I think to this audience, it's not news that North America is dealing with an opioid overdose epidemic, toxicity crisis, whatever you want to call it. People are dying. And when you look at this is overdose death related to overdose death in US, but Canada's data is very similar. So we started to see some trend change in 2014, 2015-ish. And as you can see, the one on top that you've heard a lot about is about synthetic opioids, fentanyl, and its analogs, and all of that. But what else is also increasing is methamphetamine being present in overdose death. And then what's more interesting is that this is still data from US, is that methamphetamine plus synthetic opioids has been increasing rapidly. That's why we wanted to see how does methamphetamine use look like among people who use opioids. Why? Because it leads to increased risk of fatal, non-fatal overdose, increased hospitalization, poor treatment outcomes with OAT and other things. So we try to identify the evidence that assesses trend of methamphetamine use among people who use opioids and characterize what are the correlates, what are the covariates. What we didn't know is that it's really hard to define people who use opioids. So if you're running a study on people who use opioids, please use a standard metric. It's really challenging to limit studies to a comparable population. And that's why everything we did was narrative. So we relied on problematic use as defined by the study or a clinical diagnosis based on some diagnostic tool or something that could be identified as problematic, like daily heavy use of opioids or something like that. And then we looked at studies that assessed methamphetamine and almost done with time, but okay. And the outcome was methamphetamine use or injection. We included 33 studies. Almost all of the studies that looked at trends, 12 studies looked at trends, 11 in North America, 1 in Vietnam, nowhere else. It doesn't mean that other settings outside North America don't have this problem, but maybe it's not under the radar yet. One interesting finding was that several studies showed that people receiving OAT had reduced methamphetamine use. You see, it was associated with a range of factors, which I'm not going to get into, but our take-home message was that we need to take a step back and avoid focusing on this opioid-centric epidemic. We really have to see this as a holistic issue. It's opioids, methamphetamines, and now it's like benzodiazepines. So we really need like a comprehensive, holistic lens there. Effective candidates for medications, and we can discuss this later. We usually say there is not much there, but we just published a network meta-analysis of all RCTs. If you define your outcomes to go beyond abstinence, there are stuff that work. And then we have to address the structural inequities for sure, and some publications that might be of interest to people. Sorry, I'm very over time.
Thank you, Mohammad. Questions?
Best present. Oh.
Yes. Just see if there's
Is there a question?
Sorry, I didn't know if you had time for questions. Okay, I was wondering if you could provide an interpretation of why OAT is like not associated with methamphetamine use. Like, do you feel like people have a kind of primary drug or like is there any kind of interpretation that you gave of that finding?
Well, I think like one thing that, and we've looked at a lot of qualitative evidence in terms of why people are using methamphetamine in addition. So like one primary reason that we have identified in qualitative evidence for using methamphetamine when people are on OAT or like are using opioids is to deal with withdrawal symptoms and balance out their opioid high, and then be able to have like some assertiveness to run their stuff during the day and be alert. So it's likely that those who do have access to sufficiently dosed OAT and accessible OAT are more stable, so they don't need to rely as much. But again, similar to opioid use, and being a methodologist, I should acknowledge that like the methamphetamine use variable that we looked at, it ranged from methamphetamine use daily to methamphetamine use in the past year. So like there is a lot of heterogeneity is there. So I don't want to overstate that finding in that sense. But that's something that about half of the studies looked at.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Any other?